Good morning, dear students. Welcome to Diksha Online. Today we are going to go through the synopsis part of surface chemistry and followed by questions with respect to metallurgy, D&F block elements and surface chemistry. In surface chemistry, we cover three aspects. One is adsorption, second one is catalysis, and third one is colloids. So adsorption is a phenomena where the accumulation of one substance on the surface of the other. So it is only concentration of one substance on the surface of the other without getting penetrating into the bulk. The substance which get adsorbed is known as adsorbate, and the substance on which adsorption takes place is known as adsorbent. So example, I can say adsorption of ink on piece of chalk. There are two types of adsorption. One is physical adsorption. In physical adsorption, the adsorbate and adsorbent are held by only van der Waals forces of attraction. In case of gases being adsorbed on solid surfaces, the best example is a charcoal piece can adsorb almost every gas. So especially poisonous gases will be adsorbed on charcoal. This principle is used in gas masks. In chemical adsorption, the adsorption is in case the adsorbate and adsorbent are held by relatively stronger chemical bonds. So here particular gas can be adsorbed on a particular metal. So hydrogen adsorption on nickel surface is an example for chemical adsorption. What are the differences between physical and chemical adsorption? As the first point said already, adsorbate and adsorbent held by weak van der Waals forces, and in case of chemical adsorption they are held by strong chemical bonds. In case of physical adsorption, it is not very specific. So any gas can be made to adsorb on a piece of charcoal. So that is depends only on the nature of the adsorbent. But in case of chemical adsorption, it is very specific. A particular gas can be adsorbed on a particular solid surface. So it depends both on adsorbate as well as adsorbent. And in case of physical adsorption, it is a reversible process, meaning with the increase in pressure, the adsorption increases. If you decrease the pressure, the desorption takes place. In case of chemical adsorption, it is irreversible. So if you increase the pressure, it goes on increasing, and when you decrease the pressure, the adsorbed molecules will not come out of the surface because they are held by chemical bonds. So desorption will not be happening. And since it is only van der Waals forces, the heat liberated during adsorption is relatively less. And in case of chemical adsorption, it is through chemical bonds, so enthalpy adsorption is relatively higher. And in case of physical adsorption, the adsorption decreases with increase in temperature. If we heat the substance, then desorption goes on taking place. In case of chemical adsorption, initially it increases, then it decreases with the increase in temperature. So it is favored relatively at a higher temperature than physical adsorption. And in case of physical adsorption, you can get even multi-molecular layer. If one layer is covered, monomolecular layer is covered, it can form second layer of molecules, third layer of molecules, because it is only van der Waals force of attraction. In case of chemical adsorption, the second layer cannot form a bond with the atoms present in the metal surface, so there is only unimolecular layer is observed. And in case of physical adsorption, the extent of adsorption increases with increase in pressure, and here also the extent of adsorption increases with increase in pressure and becomes constant because the surface is covered by unimolecular layer. Even after that, if you increase the pressure, almost there is no effect of pressure on adsorption. Adsorption isotherm. This is a graphical representation or a mathematical relation which indicate the variation of extent of adsorption with pressure at a given temperature. To explain the variation of extent of adsorption, we have two types of adsorption isotherm: Freundlich adsorption isotherm and Langmuir adsorption isotherm. Freundlich adsorption isotherm. So it is given by x by m is equal to k into p to the power 1 by n, where x is mass of adsorbate, m is mass of adsorbent. Means x by m is the mass of gas adsorbed per unit mass of the adsorbent. P is the pressure of the gas and K and N are constants. If I take log for the same equation, I get log x by m is equal to log K plus 1 by N log P. So if I plot a graph of log of x by m versus log P, I get a straight line with a positive slope. From the intercept, I can get log K and slope is equal to 1 by N. So this is the graph we can see. So log x by m versus log p, the intercept is nothing but log k and the slope is given by 1 by n. If I directly plot x by m versus p, the curve will be obtained, say an exponential increasing curve, but towards the end it goes almost becoming constant. So Freundlich adsorption isotherm successfully applicable at relatively lower pressure regions, but as a high pressure region, the extent of adsorption will almost become constant. So Langmuir adsorption, Freundlich adsorption isotherm actually unable to explain the variation of adsorption at high pressure region. Langmuir adsorption isotherm, to overcome the difficulty of Freundlich adsorption isotherm, the Langmuir adsorption isotherm is given. It is given by x by m is equal to AP by 1 plus BP. It is only qualitative expression. A and B are constant. Again, x is a mass of adsorbent, m is a mass of the adsorbent, P is pressure, A and B are constant. So I can say at low pressure 1 plus BP is approximately equal to 1. So in case of that, x by m is proportional to AP, that means x by m is equal to AP, or x by m is proportional to the pressure. So the initial lower pressure region, the extent of adsorption increases with increase in pressure. That can be explained by this adsorption isotherm. And at high pressure 1 plus BP is almost equal to BP, then x by m is equal to AP by BP. So PB get cancelled, x by m becomes A by B, which is equal to constant. That means at high pressure the extent of adsorption almost remain constant. It doesn't increase or decrease with the increase in pressure. So it is able to explain at both high pressure and low pressure region. Adsorption from solution phase. The solid adsorbents can absorb particles even from the solution phase also. So here the extent of adsorption in solution phase is directly proportional to concentration of a solute. So it's basically the pressure part is replaced by concentration. So if you take the equation, x by m is equal to k into c to the power 1 by n, or log x by m is equal to log k plus 1 by n log c. So just the pressure term is replaced by concentration term. Applications of adsorption. So ion exchange resins will work with the concept of adsorption. So ion exchange column which can exchange cations or anions. So production of triple distilled water through this ion exchange resins will be based on adsorption phenomena, and all chromatographic techniques is based on adsorption. Gas masks have activated charcoal which can absorb all the poisonous gases, and production of soft water from hard water using zeolites is based on adsorption phenomena. The complete principle of heterogeneous catalysis is explained with respect to adsorption theory, and isolation of noble gases using coconut shell charcoal. This is based on adsorption of different noble gases at different temperature. It is known as Dewar's method of isolation of noble gases. And sugar industry and petroleum industry, the unwanted coloring matter is removed by adding charcoal to it. So these are some of the applications of adsorption. Second part is catalysis. So as you know, a catalyst is a substance which alters the rate of a chemical reaction and itself without undergoing any change in the chemical composition. So physically there may be some changes with respect to physical state of the catalyst during the course of the reaction, but chemical composition will not be altered. And a positive catalyst is having positive effect on the reaction. It increases the rate of a chemical reaction, and negative catalyst will act as an inhibitor. It decreases the rate of a chemical reaction. Types of catalysis. So there are two types here: homogeneous catalysis. In case of homogeneous catalysis, both catalyst and the reactants are in same physical state. So physical state of the reactants and the catalyst should be same. The product physical state can be different. So in example, sulfur dioxide combining with oxygen to form sulfur trioxide is catalyzed by nitric oxide, gaseous nitric oxide. So this will be done in lead chamber process of manufacture of sulfuric acid. And heterogeneous catalysis, the catalyst and the reactants are in different physical state. The same reaction SO2 plus O2 gives SO3 can also be catalyzed by either vanadium pentoxide or platinized asbestos, which is the basic principle in contact process of manufacturing sulfuric acid. So homogeneous and heterogeneous catalysis. What are the general characteristics of a catalyst? So as a catalyst is not going to be consumed in the reaction, the catalyst remain unchanged in mass and chemical composition at the end of the reaction. So it can take part in the reaction, but it has to be regenerated at the end of the reaction. Since it is not consumed, so a small quantity of the catalyst is sufficient to bring about the catalysis. But in some reaction, the rate of chemical reaction do depend on the concentration of the catalyst. And remember, a catalyst cannot initiate a chemical reaction. It can never start. It can only speeds up the reaction which is already in progress. And it is very specific in its action. There is nothing called as an universal catalyst which can be a catalyst for all chemical reaction. So catalysis is a specific process. A catalyst will not change the position of equilibrium in a reversible reaction. Irrespective of whether we use a catalyst or not, the equilibrium constant at a given temperature will not change. But in presence of a catalyst, the equilibrium is attained relatively faster. So the time taken to attain equilibrium is less in presence of a catalyst compared to a non-catalyzed reversible reaction. Catalytic promoter, a substance which can enhance the activity of a catalyst, but this substance is not a catalyst to the reaction, but it is a catalyst to the catalyst, so that is called as a catalytic promoter. So example, in Haber's process, we use iron as a catalyst, but presence of small amount of molybdenum will enhance the activity of iron catalyst. So molybdenum act as a catalytic promoter. Catalytic poison. So in case of catalytic poison, the substance which is present even in minute quantity may destroy the complete activity of the catalyst. So the example is in contact process, the platinized asbestos catalyst can be completely deactivated by the presence of arsenic compounds, not only arsenic oxide, arsenic compounds. So that's why the gases are passed through a separate chamber called as arsenic purifier before making it enter into the catalytic chamber. So in contact process, the arsenic compounds can act as a poison for platinized asbestos. The theories of catalysis: intermediate compound formation theory. This is explaining the mechanism of homogeneous catalysis. So in case of homogeneous catalysis, the catalyst will take part in a reaction. So the reactant will first react with the catalyst to form an intermediate compound, and this intermediate compound can react with another reactant and finally forming the products with complete regeneration of the catalyst. So in case of lead chamber process, SO2 plus O2 is catalyzed by NO. So NO is first reacting with oxygen to form NO2, then NO2 is reacting with SO2 to form SO3 and regenerating nitric oxide. So this is an example for homogeneous catalysis, which works on an intermediate compound formation. In case of heterogeneous catalysis, it is explained by adsorption theory. So, adsorption theory can explain only heterogeneous catalysis. According to this theory, the reactants are getting adsorbed on the surface of the catalyst. So, surface of the catalyst will be allowing the reactant molecule to come and adsorb on the surface, and due to adsorption, adsorption is an exothermic phenomena. So, the energy liberated due to adsorption will be absorbed by these molecules and they are more activated, and also on the surface the concentration is also more for the reactants. So, reaction takes place on the surface of the catalyst at a higher rate and forms the product, but the product formed will not have any affinity to the surface. As a result, the product will get dissolved. So, when the product molecules are going out of the surface of the catalyst, the surface is free and more number of reactant molecules can come and adsorb on the surface of the catalyst. So, this is how the heterogeneous catalysis work. And for a solid catalyst, always we have to take the solids in finely divided form to have a larger surface area, and due to the fine cutting of the metal particles, it will have more number of active sites. So, active sites are the points on the surface of the catalyst where there is a sharp edge or the cut which will have unsatisfied valencies, so they can adsorb the gases more effectively. So, by taking the solids in finely divided form, we can create large surface area as well as higher number of active sites. Enzyme. In case of enzyme catalysis, these enzymes are the biochemical catalysis. So, it will catalyze the various biochemical reactions happening in our body, and these catalyses are similar to homogeneous catalysis. So, they will be taking part in the reaction, forming a complex, and then complex will break to form product and giving back the enzyme. So, it is like homogeneous catalysis, and these enzymes are even very highly specific in their action, and the efficiency of a catalyst as enzyme as a catalyst is very high. It can increase the rate of the biochemical reaction up to 10 power 6 and to 10 power 8 times, a huge increase in the rate due to the presence of the enzyme. But the enzymes are very active only at an optimum temperature and optimum pH of the medium. If there is a small change in the temperature or the pH of the medium, the enzyme activity drastically drops down. So, mechanism of enzyme catalysis. The enzyme catalysis proceeds with lock and key mechanism. The substrate binds the enzyme to form what is called as enzyme substrate complex. This enzyme substrate complex break to form the products with the regeneration of the enzyme, which is looking for another substrate molecule to form the complex. Likewise, the reactants are getting converted to product, but enzyme will remain as it is. Application of catalysis. So, industrial applications. First one, manufacture of sulfuric acid by contact process. We use vanadium pentoxide or platinized asbestos as a catalyst for this process. Same way, manufacture of ammonia by Haber's process. We use iron catalyst and molybdenum promoter. And manufacture of nitric acid by Ostwald process, and here we use platinum rhodium gauze as a catalyst for Ostwald process. Then hydrogenation of oil in production of vanaspati ghee. Finely divided nickel is used as the catalyst for hydrogenation reaction of oils, and especially in production of ethyl alcohol on large scale, the fermentation process is used. In this fermentation, enzyme invertase and enzyme zymase will help the conversion of sucrose to glucose and fructose, and finally glucose and fructose to ethyl alcohol. And also the lead chamber process of manufacturing sulfuric acid using nitric oxide as the catalyst. So, these are some of the applications of catalysis. The third part is colloids. So colloidal state is a state of matter having particle size between 1 nanometer and 100 nanometer. It is a heterogeneous system and containing two phases. One is solute-like particle known as dispersed phase and a solvent-like medium known as dispersion medium. So the colloidal system is always heterogeneous, having two phases. Based on the dispersed phase and dispersion medium, we have the following colloidal system. If it is solid in solid, it is called as solid sol. So example is gemstones for this. Colored stones, whatever used in jewelry, is an example of the solid sol, where a solid metallic oxide is dispersed in that particular stone. So solid in liquid, that is called as sol. So example for sol is muddy water, gold sol, silver sol. Most of the liquid solutions which are used even in food items like rasam, sambar, they are also coming under sol. Then solid in gas, it's called as solid aerosol. Example is smoke and dust. Then liquid as a dispersed phase and medium is solid. Liquid in solid will be called as gel. So fruit jellies, fruit jam, toothpaste, these are the example for gel. Then liquid in liquid is called as emulsion. Milk is the best example for emulsion. Then liquid in gas called as liquid aerosol. So we have fog and mist coming under that category. So the dispersed phase is gas. So gas in solid, it is called as solid foam. So dry sponge is an example for solid foam. And gas in liquid is called as foam, and example is the soap lather and the soap foam, or any kind of foam we use is coming under gas in liquid. So if I take the final possibility, gas in gas, it is always forming homogeneous mixture, but colloidal system is always heterogeneous. So gas in gas system is not there in colloidal state. Types of salts. So there are two types of salts, lyophilic salts and lyophobic salts. Lyophilic salts are the salts in which there is a high affinity between dispersed phase and dispersion medium. So molecules of the dispersed phase having very high affinity for the medium particles. So example will be starch solution, protein solution, is going to be lyophilic salts. And lyophobic salts are the one where there is little or almost no affinity between the dispersed phase and dispersion medium. So there are many examples for this category: gold salt, ferric hydroxide salt, silver salt. So many metallic salts are going to be lyophobic. Even blood is a lyophobic salt. Differences between lyophilic and lyophobic salts. So as the definition says, high affinity between dispersed phase and dispersion medium, and in lyophobic, low or almost no affinity between dispersed phase and dispersion medium. And lyophilic salt can be prepared by direct mixing of DP and DM. DP is dispersed phase, DM is dispersion medium. And in case of lyophobic salt, we have to prepare it by special methods. So if I want to prepare gold salt, if you put gold and water, absolutely nothing will happen. And in case of lyophilic salt, they are very highly stable because of high affinity between the medium and the particle. The salts will be very highly stable. In case of lyophobic salt, it will be least stable. That means the lyophobic salt can be easily coagulated. Coagulation is a process where we convert the colloidal particles into precipitation. So here in lyophilic, they cannot be easily coagulated. And in case of lyophilic salt, they are reversible in nature. That means if I take a salt, separate the dispersion phase and dispersion medium, again if you mix it, you can get back the salt. But in case of lyophobic, since they are not prepared by direct mixing, if you separate the particle and the medium, then if you mix it again, we will never get the salt. So it is irreversible in nature. and the viscosity of the sol is always higher than that of the dispersion medium in case of lyophilic, and in case of lyophobic the medium and the sol will almost have same kind of viscosity, and the surface tension is lower than the dispersion medium for lyophilic, and again here also surface tension is more or less same as the dispersion medium. So these are some of the important differences between lyophilic and lyophobic salts. Preparation of salts, lyophobic salts, special methods. So first one is dispersion method. So in this method, the name of the method is Briggs arc method. So what we do is we take the metal to be converted into sol, like gold sol. If I want to prepare, the gold electrodes are taken, immersed in the medium in which the sol has to be prepared. Usually it will be water. So to stabilize the sol in case of gold sol preparation, we add a small amount of base to stabilize the sol which is produced. And this entire container is kept in a freezing mixture to cool down the solution due to the condensation of that particular metal particles. So after taking the freezing mixture, we have to strike an electric arc. We have to strike an electric arc with a high voltage, 8000 to 10,000 volts will be struck between the two electrodes. Due to that high potential, an electric arc is produced which will heat up the metal, and metal gets vaporized. A part of the metal gets vaporized and the vapors are condensed into the medium to give particles of colloidal size. Now here what happens, especially in gold sol, the color of the sol prepared will be different for different concentration, and the particle size will also matter. So gold sol prepared can have different colors, that is because of the different size of the particles. And the standard gold sol will be red in color, which is mainly used in various tonics. So gold sol, silver sol are prepared by this Briggs arc method. Peptization. In case of peptization, we add a freshly precipitated precipitate like ferric hydroxide added to solution of ferric chloride. So what happens is the ferric hydroxide particles are converted into colloidal size. The precipitation, that suspension size particles are converted into colloidal size, that is known as peptization. So these ferric hydroxide particles preferentially absorb ferric ions and become positively charged sol. So since the sol particle gets positively charged, they repel each other, they will not form aggregates and getting precipitated again. So the charge on the colloidal particle makes the lyophobic sol to be more stable. Chemical methods. In chemical methods, we have arsenic sulfide sol prepared by the equation. So arsenic oxide with H2S gives rise to arsenic sulfide with water. This will be negatively charged arsenic sulfide particles. So these arsenic sulfide particles preferentially absorb sulfide ion on their surface. The sulfur salt can be prepared by combination of H2S and SO2. So if you combine H2S and SO2, we will get a sulfur with water. Sulfur is going to form the colloidal size particles. Gold salt can be prepared by chemical combination, double reduction reaction. AuCl3 is reduced to Au by SnCl2. The Au particles formed will be of colloidal size. These are some of the chemical methods by which we can make a sol. Now once the sol is prepared by special method, it will have different types of impurities. So the impurities can be first suspension size particles that can be easily removed by using normal filtration, because normal filter paper only suspension particles will be withheld. The particles of true solution and colloidal size will go through the filter paper. So that is the removal of suspension size particle, but the more difficult one to remove is the true solution particles. So to remove that, we use a process called as dialysis. So in this process, the removal of particles of true solution will be from the colloidal solution will be done. So colloidal solution is taken in the parchment bag and placed in an outer container in which we circulate water continuously. So this water circulation will make sure that all the particles of true solution is driven away by the water current. As a result, the solution in the parchment bag will be free from all types of true particle impurities. So the process is much slower, it will take time. To speed up the process, we use even electrical energy. And the movement of particles can be made faster by using electrical energy, that is known as electrodialysis. Ultrafiltration. So ultrafilter paper is also available that can be prepared by soaking the normal filter paper with a collodion solution and then subsequently soak with formaldehyde. The collodion solution normally used is 4% nitrocellulose in alcohol. So the normal filter paper is soaked in this and followed by soaking it in formaldehyde and allow it to dry. The filter paper will become ultrafilter paper. So this ultrafilter paper can withhold all the colloidal particles. It will allow only true solution particle to go through it. So if I take the colloidal solution, use the ultrafilter paper and do the filtration, we get only the colloidal solution, but true solution particle will go in the filtrate. Properties of colloids. The first one is Tyndall effect. It is the phenomena of the scattering of the light by colloidal particles. When the white light or any kind of light is made to pass through a colloidal solution, the particles in the solution will scatter the light. The beam of light is passed through the colloidal solution and we can see the path of the light due to the scattering. So the intensity of the scattered radiation is always maximum at right angles to the incident radiation. So when we see the scattered radiation from an angle of almost 90 degree to the incident right, the particles are going to be very well defined. We can see it even more clearly. So this principle is used in making ultra microscope. So the colloidal solution is observed at right angles to the incident radiation. The particles are very clearly visible. So such an arrangement is known as ultra microscope. So we can see very clearly here, this is a light source and this is a colloidal solution. Observation is at 90 degrees. So this is going to be an arrangement called as ultra microscope. Same microscope, but because of the Tyndall effect, we are able to see the particle very clearly. Brownian movement. So it is the random or zigzag movement of colloidal particles, and this is due to the collision of the particle of the colloidal size with the particles of dispersion medium. So dispersion medium particles are invisible, only particles of colloid will be visible. So when there is a collision, there will be change in direction. So we can see that only colloidal particles moving here and there. So whenever there is a change in the direction, there is a collision with the molecule of dispersion medium. Since molecules of dispersion medium is invisible, we see only the zigzag movement of colloidal particles, which is termed as Brownian movement. Properties of colloids, again charge on the colloidal particles. So how the charge will come onto lyophobic colloidal particles? So as we discussed earlier, it is due to the preferential adsorption of the positive or negative ions from the dispersion medium. So when there is an adsorption of positive ions on its surface, that will give rise to a positively charged colloid, and if there is an accumulation of negative charged particles on the surface of the colloidal particle, the sol will be negatively charged. Since the colloidal particles are charged, they repel each other and they do not undergo coagulation. As a result, the charge is the main reason for the stability of lyophobic colloidal particles. Zeta potential or electrokinetic potential. So colloidal particles are charged. They absorb the ions from the solution to become either positively charged or negatively charged. So there will be a fixed layer of charges on the surface of the colloidal particles. This fixed charge will attract the opposite charged ions from the solution. but the solution ions, they can keep moving. As a result, there is a diffuse layer. So there will be a difference in charge of the fixed layer and the charges in the diffuse layer. Due to the difference between these two, a potential is developed on the surface of the particle. It is known as zeta potential or electrokinetic potential. It is given by 4 pi nu d. So neta is coefficient of viscosity, d is called as the dielectric constant of the medium, u is the velocity of the particle. Electrophoresis. This is the movement of the colloidal particles under the influence of electrical energy to the oppositely charged electrodes. So, if I take a colloidal solution, dip two electrodes and pass electric current, if the sol is negatively charged particle, it will go towards anode. If the particles are positively charged, it will go to cathode. So, this movement of colloidal particles under the influence of electric current is called as electrophoresis, and at the electrode they lose their charges and they get precipitated. So, positively charged colloidal particles will move towards cathode and negatively charged particles will move towards anode. Coagulation. In case of coagulation, we convert the particles of colloidal size into particle of suspension size. So, then that is going to be getting precipitated down. Generally, colloidal particles will not settle under gravity, but the precipitation happens once the particle size crosses 100 nanometers. So, we are converting the particles of colloidal size to particles of suspension size so that it comes down and settle at the bottom. The lyophobic colloids are carrying the charge. So, this charge is neutralized by the adding of electrolytes. If you add electrolytes, oppositely charged ions will cancel the charge on the colloidal particles, and since the charge is cancelled or neutralized, now the particles are not charged, they start coming closer to each other and forming aggregates. When the size of the aggregated particle crosses 100 nanometer, it starts precipitating down, which is nothing but coagulation. Hardy and Schulz rule. In case of coagulation, we add a suitable electrolyte for the coagulation to occur. The positive ion will coagulate the negatively charged sol, and the negative ion will coagulate the positively charged sol. So, according to Hardy and Schulz rule, the higher the charge on the active ion is the ion which can bring about the coagulation of the negative or positively charged sol. So, the charge of the active ion is higher, the coagulating power will be higher. So, if I take a negatively charged sol, then the coagulating power will be in the order of Al3 plus, Mg2 plus, Na plus. You can see there is 3 positive charges and 2 positive charges, 1 positive charges. So, 1 aluminum ion can neutralize 3 charges. That is why the power of aluminum is more than magnesium and sodium. Same way, for a positively charged particles, the negative charged ion will be the active ion. So, the charge on the negative ion decreases from phosphate to chloride. The coagulating power also decreases from phosphate to chloride. Coagulation value or flocculation value. So, it is defined in terms of number of millimoles of the electrolyte required to coagulate 1 liter of the given sol at a given temperature. So, number of millimoles of the electrolyte which is required to coagulate 1 liter of the given sol. If the coagulation value is higher, that means I require higher number of millimoles of the solute for coagulating the same colloidal solution, means the coagulating power of the electrolyte will be less. So, if I take for example, for a negatively charged electrode, if I take aluminum salt Al2SO4 thrice and MgSO4 and Na2SO4. So, if I take these, the aluminum charge, aluminum being plus 3 charge, number of millimoles of aluminum salt required will be less compared to number of millimoles of magnesium salt compared to number of millimoles of sodium salt. As a result, the aluminum will have a least coagulation value, that means coagulation power is higher. protective colloids. So these are nothing but the lyophilic colloid when added to lyophobic colloid, which form a protective layer on the surface of the lyophobic colloid. So now the lyophobic colloid will have an outer covering of lyophilic colloid, so it will not be getting coagulated easily. That is why the lyophilic colloid is now protecting the lyophobic colloid from getting coagulated. So example, gelatin used in ice creams will be a best example for the protective colloid. And also we know that blood is a lyophobic colloid. The protein present in the blood will act as a protective colloid for the blood. That's why blood will not get clotted inside so far many years. The blood will remain as a colloidal solution because of the protective colloid action happening in the blood. The protective power of lyophilic colloid is expressed in terms of gold number. So what is this gold number? Gold number is the number of milligrams of the dry protective colloid which is required to prevent the color change of 10 ml of standard gold sol from red to blue when added by 1 ml of 10% NaCl solution. So when 10 ml of standard gold sol is red in color. So when you add 1 ml of 10% NaCl solution without adding any protective colloid, the color of the gold sol changes from red to blue. That means it is getting coagulated. So color change is indicating the coagulation. So this red color change is prevented by adding some milligrams of the dry protective colloid. So that is a minimum amount what is required to prevent the coagulation is called as gold number. So higher the gold number, lesser will be the protective power. So some examples we can take: gelatin is 0.005 to 0.01, whereas starch has 25. So to prevent the same color change, I need 25 milligrams of starch, but I require only 0.005 milligrams of gelatin. So gelatin has a higher protective power than starch. Like that, egg albumin also have 0.08 to 1. Emulsions. In emulsions, the liquid dispersed in liquid, there are two types of emulsion. One is water in oil type, example paints, and oil in water type, example is milk. To increase the stability of emulsion, certain compounds are added which are called as emulsifier, stabilizing agents. So types of colloids based on the particle size. First one we say macromolecular colloid. So macromolecular colloid means it's a polymeric type of molecule, and this polymeric type of molecule are getting distributed in the colloidal range. And the best example is the starch solution. Starch is nothing but a polymer of D-glucose, so that is going to be a macromolecular colloidal solution. Then multimolecular colloid. So this is not a macromolecule, small molecules, but more number of molecules are forming aggregate and forming a particle that is range in the colloidal range 1 to 100 nanometer. So large number of simple molecules aggregate to form the particles of colloidal size. Example is gold sol, sulfur sol. These metallic sols are going to be aggregation of metal particles to give particles of colloidal range. Associated colloid. Associated colloid is the one where the substances which associate spontaneously. The moment they are getting in the solution, they are forming association spontaneously to form particles of colloidal size. So this will be known as associated colloid. The best example is the micelle formation from soap solution. The soap molecule will be nothing but sodium or potassium salt of long chain fatty acids. So this long chain fatty acid will have a polar part, that is, if I take this a long chain and at the end you have COO minus. So this is the polar part and this will be non-polar part. So this will be hydrophilic, and this would be hydrophobic. So So these are the different parts of the soap molecule. So cleansing action of soap, how does micelle forms? When soap is applied on the dirt, the hydrophilic part gets miscible with the dirt particle which is oily in nature. So when the dirt particles is getting miscible with the non-polar part, and the non-polar part gets into the bulk, and the hydrophilic part projects outwards. So as a particle, the outer particle will have lyophilic nature, so that will be miscible with water, and water can take away that ionic micelle. So large number of such soap molecules associate to form what is called as ionic micelle, and this micelle is miscible with water and washed away very easily. This is the picture of ionic micelle. So this is the dirt particle which is oily in nature. So all these non-polar part coming into the bulk and holding on to that oil particle. So outer surface will be COO minus, which is going to be along with Na plus. So that is a polar part, that's why it is going to be lyophilic. So these are the number of soap molecules getting associated to form a single particle. As a result, number of particles decreases during micelle formation. So critical micelle concentration and Kraft temperature. So micelle formation will not take place the moment we add the soap solution to water. It requires a specific concentration. So micelle formation takes place if the concentration of soap solution is above a minimum value. This minimum value is called as CMC, or critical micelle concentration. So CMC for soap solution is around 0.001 molar, 0.001 molar to 0.0001 molar. So 10 power minus 3 to 10 power minus 4 molar, and the minimum temperature at which the micelle formation takes place is known as Kraft temperature. So two concepts important, CMC and Kraft temperature. Application of colloids. In nature we see lot of application of colloids. So most important one, blue color of the sky. The sky appears blue in the daytime because of the colloidal particles present in the atmosphere will scatter the sunlight, and the maximum intensity is, the wavelength is towards blue range. So entire sky appears blue only because of the atmosphere what is present in the earth. Suppose if I go out of the atmospheric range, I can see even in the daytime the sky appears black. And fog, mist, rain. Rain is best example for coagulation. When two clouds having oppositely charged colloidal particles of water, when they come and collide with each other, they come in contact with each other, the particles will neutralize each other and they start forming aggregation. Once the particle size crosses 100 nanometer, it will come out in the form of a droplets, and that appears like a rain. So rain is best example for coagulation. Food materials like butter, milk, fruit juice, they are all colloidal in nature. And blood is one of the important liquid what we have in our body, which is going to be example for lyophobic colloid. And formation of delta region, when the river meets sea, the salt solution present in the sea water will coagulate the colloidal particles, or the whatever the colloidal particles present in the river water. As a result, the region of meeting of river and sea will appear like a delta region. That's why it is called as delta region. The technical application. So we have Cottrell precipitator. In Cottrell precipitator, industrial chimney will have two electrodes maintained at a very high potential difference. When the gas, which is smoke which is coming out of the chimney having the colloidal particles of carbon, they are attracted by the electrodes and they get precipitated down. So the carbon free smoke is expelled into the atmosphere. Then clarification of drinking water. The potash alum is used for this. So potash alum will coagulate all the colloidal impurities and makes it to be precipitated down. The colloidal impurity free water will be taken for the next step in production of potable water or drinking water. Medicinal field, most of the medicinal preparation what we use like tonics, syrups, they will have a base material, it's nothing but the various salts. And intramuscular injection, what is given, that is also going to be colloidal base. Then rubber industry, the natural rubber is coagulated from latex of rubber tree using citric acid. So these are the synopsis points for surface chemistry. Thank you.